A big win for the Bucs to open the season despite all the injuries. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this post-game live episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media as editor-in-chief of the 813.tv, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message, especially during games. My insiders and I were talking a lot during this game. You can become an insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. PrizePicks, run your game. Biggest takeaways from the win over Washington, and we're handing out game balls as we do after every win. That's all coming up in a little bit, but let's kick things off with the biggest moment of the game. And to me, the biggest moment of the game was more like a series of moments because it was the Bucs' third possession of the game. To that point, they had Jalen McMillan drop a sure touchdown on third down on the opening drive. They had to settle for a Chase McLaughlin field goal. Then on their second possession, Chris Godwin gets a big first down. It's called back because of a holding penalty against Trey Palmer. It stalls the drive. They have to settle for yet another Chase McLaughlin field goal. The third possession, the Bucs got a big 8-yard run from Bucky Irving for the last play of the first quarter. Then when the second quarter started, you had back-to-back false starts, forcing them from a 2nd and 2 to a 2nd and 12. This is where I think the game really changed for the Buccaneers. They were able to gain 5 yards on second down. On 3rd and 7, Baker found Mr. Third Down himself, Chris Godwin, to move the sticks. They get a first down at the Washington 49. Then a negative run by Bucky Irving sets up 2nd and 14. Baker finds Trey Palmer for 19 yards. Another first down, another negative play. Rachaad White got tackled for a 2-yard loss, but then he gets the catch and run for 19 yards and another first down, and then boom, Mike Evans, beautiful contested catch for a 17-yard touchdown. This entire sequence was huge because the Bucs could not overcome adversity on the first 2 drives. And all of a sudden on this third drive, it was move back, big play. You move backwards, then you get it going again. They kept shooting themselves in the foot, but they were able to overcome it each and every time. And that, to me, set the tone for the rest of the game. Now, of course, Washington answered back with a touchdown of their own, cutting the lead to 13-7, but then the Bucs march right back down the field, get another Chase McLaughlin field goal. He was absolutely fantastic on Sunday. First possession of the second half, touchdown. Their only punt of the day came on their next possession, and then 2 more touchdown drives for the Buccaneers. There wasn't really anything that happened to the Bucs where they didn't rise to the occasion. Even the injuries, which no word on those that I have seen as of yet. Hopefully we have more information for tomorrow's show. But they came into this game without Logan Hall, without Kalijah Kancey, with Ernest Brown going to injured reserve. During the game, Zion McCollum leaves with a concussion. Josh Hayes leaves with an ankle injury. And then Bryce Hall, who came in for Zion McCollum, has to be carted off the field wearing an air cast because of an ankle injury that was so bad that the commentators on the TV broadcast said that they were not going to show the replay because it was too gruesome. That is bad news for the Buccaneers moving forward. But time after time, the defense stepped up. They were down 3 defensive linemen, down 3 corners. Levante David left for a little while in the first half because of cramping. He needed an IV. Yaya Diaby came up limping at one point. The defense still rallied. Here's how the defensive possessions went: punt, missed field goal, touchdown, missed field goal, punt, touchdown, punt, garbage time touchdown. On the Commanders' first touchdown drive, and this is something that I think a lot of people are going to overlook, but was a massive play in my opinion. Jaden Daniels scrambles on 2nd and 10 for a 12-yard gain, and the referees flagged Antoine Winfield Jr. for unnecessary roughness for a helmet-to-helmet hit. What the officials failed to notice was that Yaya Diaby's head was being twisted around like he was the exorcist, which sprung Daniels for that run in the first place. At best, it should have been Yaya's first sack of the season. At worst, it should have been offsetting penalties and replay the down. In spite of all the questions and all the problems coming into this game, the defense did a really solid job. They gave up 88 yards rushing and 2 rushing touchdowns to Jaden Daniels. Again, one of those coming in garbage time, but they shut down Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler, who combined for 50 yards on 14 carries. The longest run between either of those guys was just 7 yards. On Friday, I talked about how important it was for the Bucs to eliminate the running game of Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler to turn the Commanders one-dimensional, and how vital that would be to their success, and that's exactly what they did. Daniels was 17 of 24 passing, which was pretty good. Only 184 yards, no passing touchdowns. Washington 2 for 8 on 3rd down compared to Tampa's 9 for 13. The Bucs defense allowed 5.3 yards per play. The Bucs offense got 6.4 yards per play. Under 300 total yards on 56 offensive plays for the Washington Commanders, without Cansey, without McCollum, without Bryce Hall, with a new starting linebacker in KJ Britt, with another newbie, quote unquote, like pseudo newbie in Servassier Dennis, who came in later in the game and played fantastic. And to me, all of it stems from that third Buccaneers offensive possession where no matter what happened, they were able to overcome. That set the tone for the offense. That showed the defense that it didn't matter what happened, move on to the next play and make a play, get off the field, continue to do what you do, and it's going to result in a win, and that's exactly what happened. They need to get healthy, but this was a really good outing to start the season from both sides of the football for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Going to jump into the live chat. You guys are crushing it in here right now. Demon Hunter says it was actually Hall who was flagged for the personal foul, not Antoine Winfield Jr. That's what the referee announced. The flag was actually assessed to Antoine Winfield Jr. It was simply the referee announcing the wrong number, but that penalty was in fact assessed to Antoine Winfield Jr. Zachary with a great question. I did not plan on talking about this at all on this episode, but he says, how much leash are we granting Camarda? I like him, but his only punt today was kind of bad as well. Not a good sign. I even said on Twitter that was a Tom Cruise punt because it was pretty short. Not great from Camarda. You know, I guess the best way to hide some of Camarda's struggles is to do exactly what the Bucs offense did on Sunday against the Commanders, and that's just basically score every time you have the ball, which is pretty conducive to winning games. I personally like that strategy. I realize that it's not feasible, it's not possible, but I'm not sure what's going on with Camarda. I don't know how long of a leash he has, But if he continues to play like this, especially coming up next week against a team as explosive as the Detroit Lions, these short punts, this good field position that you give to the opponents can come back and bite the Buccaneers right in the butt. Camarda has got to get it together, or the Bucs will find an option somewhere else that looks more like the Camarda we know from most of his career up until basically the tail end of last season. We have HBK Woo says Cousins played awful today. Let's go Bucs. Yeah, Kirk Cousins, not great at all in his home debut for the Atlanta Falcons, losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's the Bucs and the Saints tied atop the NFC North, both 1-0. The Panthers and Falcons both at 0-1. The biggest takeaways from both sides of the ball, that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the only real money daily fantasy platform with injury insurance so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players leaves in the first half and doesn't return. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. It's super simple to play. You just pick more or less than a player's stat projections, then watch the winnings roll in. It's not you against thousands of other fantasy players and sharks, just you against the numbers. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, all one word, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. So many of us put all of our focus and energy into making sure that we're there to provide for other people and always put ourselves on the back burner. That can lead to problems building up from being left there too long. That's why it's so important to treat your mental health with the same care and attention you give to everyone else in your life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to fit around your busy schedule so that you don't have to leave yourself on the back burner anymore. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Liam Coen's offense is a thing. Chef's kiss, a thing of beauty. Going to talk about that in just a moment, but the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen on the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Liam Coen's offense is so much more fun and built for Baker. Baker Mayfield finished 11 yards shy of 300 and had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 touchdown passes on the day while completing 80% of his passes. Yes, 80% completion percentage for Baker Mayfield, 24 of 30. At one point, he threw 13 consecutive completions in the first half. This scheme is exactly what we were hoping to see more of last year. Lots of motion, scheming guys open, sprinkling in the run game, not being stubborn about it, while using both running backs in the passing game. And real quick, we saw it in the first half, but I don't know if I missed it in the second half or it didn't happen. But there were times that Rashad and Bucky were on the field together in the first half. I need more of that, Liam. Lots and lots more of that. But this is what we all wanted to see. Deep shots to Mike and Jalen, Chris Godwin out of the slot and on bubble screens. Of Godwin's team high 8 receptions, 5 of them were on third down and moved the sticks, including a 3rd and 17 when Godwin got a bubble screen and took it 24 yards. Cade Otton wasn't used much, but he wasn't needed in this game. Otton had plenty of these types of games last year. He's going to have plenty more of these types of games this year. There will be games where Otton has, 5 or 6 targets and comes away with, 4 or 5 receptions. But Coen wants the ball in Godwin's hands on those crucial downs, and that's exactly what was missing last season. There were games where the Bucs would score on 2 straight drives and then have 2 or 3 straight 3 and outs. This time around, Godwin is the first read for Baker on those third downs because he's so good at finding that soft area right at the sticks, and he's so sure-handed. We're going to see a lot more games like this where Camarda just isn't used because the Bucs keep stringing together scoring drives. But Baker completed passes to 7 different receivers on Sunday. That's something else that we're going to see a lot in this Liam Coen offense. Cameron Johnson had 1 carry, didn't even have a target. So there's going to be Payne Durham, didn't have a target. Sean Tucker didn't have a target. There are going to be games where Baker completes passes to 8, 9, maybe even 10 different receivers. Now, things are going to get a lot tougher next week at Detroit, but luckily the Rams are playing Detroit as this show is going on. And with Cohen's offense being so similar to what Sean McVay does in LA, Coen can kind of look at this game. He may be watching it right now, but he can look at what worked and what didn't work against this Lions defense and implement that into the game plan. But it's early. It's a small sample size. It's only been 1 game against a very beatable secondary in Washington, but this Coen offense looks to be just tailor-made for the talent on this Buccaneers roster. My biggest takeaway on defense is that the pass rush was respectable, and it's going to get better when Kalijah Kancey returns. 2 sacks for the Buccaneers defense was actually really impressive given the way that Jaden Daniels was able to escape trouble and turn it into positive plays on the ground. He is so quick and so elusive that every time the Bucs would get close, and Yaya Diaby was close on Washington's first possession, he was close on Washington's second possession, but it was a lot of close but no cigar for Yaya Diaby in this one. But Daniels was able to escape and find running lanes to get positive plays. However, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka did a phenomenal job of finishing plays in this game, getting 1.5 of the 2 sacks that the defense came away with. He shared one with Servassier Dennis in the fourth quarter. That one was started by Levante David. He got the pressure quickly. Jaden Daniels had to try to evade that, walked right into a sack from Servassier Dennis and Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Vita Vea got pressure. Diaby got pressure. Braswell looked okay at times. I'm not going to judge him too harshly in this one. Need to see more of him. Need to see that continued development. But all of this was without Kalijah Kancey, who has a huge impact on the Buccaneers' ability to have their natural pass rush be able to get into the backfield and make plays. Goff isn't going to be able to escape the way that Jaden Daniels did, so the Bucs may be able to send more blitzes than they did against Washington. Now, Goff is very good against the blitz and against pressure, but more often than not, those blitzes that Todd Bowles sent on Sunday resulted in Daniels being able to take off and not be challenged until he was well into the second level of the defense. Kancey changes that entire complexion. And look, Mike Green, Gray Gaines, they played really solid football. Again, just 50 yards allowed to the 2 running backs on 14 carries, but they don't have the pass rush skill set that Kalijah Kancey does. And when he is out there with Vita Vea, it is tough for that opposing offensive line to hold up against them, as well as all the other players that Todd Bowles likes to send after the quarterback. The injuries to the line and to the secondary are absolutely concerning. We're going to keep a close eye on that all week long. But if most of these guys are not available next week against the Lions, the Bucs won't be nearly as fortunate as they were against Washington. But I like where this defense is considering that situation. Yes, they gave up 20 points, and that doesn't look great, but they shut down Washington most of the day. I'm not going to hold a garbage time touchdown against them when they were in a prevent defense up by 23 with under 2 minutes left in the game. The most important thing right now is getting some of these key players back so we can see exactly how good this defense really can be. Jumping into the chat real quick, Bat W says JTS had a good game with a big Ric Flair woo on there. Scotty J says, give it up. Bake is built to lay leather. I mean, at one point, I thought they were going to put Baker in at linebacker. When Levante David went into the tunnel and went back to the locker room, I was like, I don't know what else they're going to do. Baker is going to have to be a linebacker at this point. Jacko in the chat says, where was Yaya? Again, Yaya was real close to a couple of sacks on that opening drive. He played really well. I pointed out earlier in the show a blatant and egregious hands to the face penalty that should have been called, where Yaya probably would have been able to get the sack there. Instead, it turned into a big gain on the ground by Jaden Daniels. All of them, or not all of them, but Yaya overall had a pretty solid game. Just couldn't quite close that in. Overall, I was pleased with Yaya Diaby's performance. The best players on each side of the ball, we are handing out game balls. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. All know how much I love going to live events, concerts, sporting events. I'm constantly talking on the show about a concert or a game I'm getting ready to go see. And the first place that I'm checking out when I look for tickets is Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. I used Game Time Picks to take my son and his girlfriend to a concert last weekend. With all-in pricing, and make sure you turn all-in pricing on the Game Time app, but with all-in pricing, you're going to know exactly what to spend up front, so there are no surprises when you get to checkout. You also have the knowledge of using Game Time's lowest price guarantees, so that if you find tickets in the same section and row for cheaper, Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Wrapping things up here on a Victory Monday live post-game reaction episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And you know how we do things after a win. For those of you that are new to the show, we hand out game balls. There's going to be 2 handed out on either side of the football, but let's start with the top one, the golden game ball, if you will. And that has to go to Baker Mayfield. What an absolutely phenomenal performance. I'll run through the stats again real quick. 24 of 30 passing, 289 yards, 4 touchdown passes. He was sacked 1 time. He escaped many, many more. No turnovers, just an absolute machine. Through the 4 o'clock games, so excluding Sunday night and excluding Monday night, Baker Mayfield has the highest passer rating in the NFL at 146.4. He just seemed completely unstoppable. Very comfortable in this offense, made some great checks and calls at the line to put the Bucs into winnable situations. This is why all offseason I was talking about Baker being able to have a better season than last year. It's a very long way to go, and is a very tough stretch of games coming up starting this week, or I guess next week, with the Detroit Lions. But he started off absolutely on fire. The most touchdown passes versus Washington in a season opener since Troy Aikman had 5 for the Dallas Cowboys back in 1999. I sure bet that the Cleveland Browns wish that they had kept Baker instead of giving up all those draft picks and all that money for Deshaun Watson. What a yikes. Shout out Jameis Winston. I hope he's starting for the Browns next week. Game ball number 2, and my top defensive player goes to Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. 1.5 sacks. Had another one early on in the game. It was negated by a Bucs penalty. Otherwise, he would be getting a lot more love than he probably is already going to get from Bucs fans as well as media. He looked fast. He looked decisive. Had a great effort closing in on plays, not just getting pressures, but finishing. A really impressive game. I need to see it more often. I need to see it more consistently. But if JTS picked this season to finally have that breakout year that we've been waiting for, he is going to be compensated very handsomely on the open market in March, or the Bucs are going to have to pay up pretty handsomely before he even reaches that point. But a great way for JTS to open up the season and quiet some of his critics. Game ball number 3, my second best offensive player in this one, I got to give it to Chris Godwin. I know Mike Evans had the 2 touchdowns, but 8 catches on 8 targets for Godwin, which led the team, 83 yards, which led the team. 62.5% of his receptions resulted in a first down on third downs. One of his receptions went for a touchdown. That is that Cooper Kupp role that we have been talking about all offseason long in this Liam Coen offense. It's going to be the vast majority of the time that Godwin leads the team in targets. Probably more often than not, he's going to lead the team in receptions. If a defensive coordinator wants to eliminate Godwin from the game, well, then they're going to get a heavy dose of Mike Evans instead. Even Jalen McMillan, 1 catch, 1 touchdown. He should have had 2 touchdowns. He really should have. But awesome to see that redemption catch of his late in the game to get that touchdown. But I'm sure Carlton Davis and CJ are just chomping at the bit to face Mike Evans and Chris Godwin next week. But this is a whole different animal. This is not the offense that Carlton Davis practiced against week in and week out for the Buccaneers for all those years. Mike was great. Bucky was great. Rashad was solid. But Godwin was the guy that kept the offense rolling all afternoon. Amazing performance. I would love to see that type of stat line for Chris Godwin, and not just stat line, that kind of impact from Chris Godwin week in and week out. I think we are going to see it. Game ball number 4. And as I'm going through this, I want you guys to drop your game balls in the chat. Game ball number 4, the second one on defense. I'm going with Jordan Whitehead. He quietly had a very good game. He led the team with 8 tackles, and you could see him all over the place. He was flying to the ball, had a really nice pass breakup, but you can just see how happy he was playing in this defense, playing in this city, in Raymond James Stadium with the Buccaneers once again. We've just scratched the surface of what he and Antoine are going to be able to accomplish on the back end of this defense this season. But for as good as I thought guys like Servassier Dennis and KJ Britt were during this game, it seemed like I never watched 2 Commanders offensive plays in a row where Whitehead wasn't right in the thick of things, closing in on the ball carrier with that speed, being around the football, and really just being that all over the place kind of defender that we knew he could be when he returned to the Buccaneers. Going to give out some of your game balls. We got Brian in the chat said Rachaad White had 106 yards total. I needed a touchdown from him, though, to be able to hit my parlay. That was the only leg of a 5-leg parlay that I missed, was a Rachaad White anytime touchdown. Daytona Dad, great to see you in the chat again. Game balls to the defensive line and Baker. The defensive line, yeah, I'm with you 100%. They did a really good job. I pointed out a couple of times the way they were able to shut down Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler in the run game. Jaden Daniels is a special player. And I realized that the 88 yards rushing that he had looks a little rough. The 2 rushing touchdowns looks a little rough. Jaden Daniels is going to make some NFL defenses look absolutely stupid this season. He is, in my opinion, the best rookie quarterback of the bunch. I thought he was the best one going into the draft. He is going to turn some heads if he can stay healthy. Dude needs to learn how to put on his helmet, because that's going to lead to problems if that helmet doesn't stay on. But I think we're going to look back in this, later on in this NFL season. We're going to look back at this week 1 game and go, wow, the Buccaneers defense did an absolutely tremendous job of shutting down Jaden Daniels compared to what he's going to do to some of the other defenses in the NFL. Lakita, and shout out to Lakita, messaged me on, as an insider, and gave me the heads up of what the radio broadcast was saying about Lavonte David. I was real close to kind of jumping off a ledge there when Lavonte was in the locker room. Lakita jumped in, goes, nope, they said on the radio broadcast he needed an IV. He was cramping, and then he came back out on the field. It was good. But Lakita said, Bucky is fast. Yes, he is. And that huge run that he had when Washington ran a jailbreak blitz, that is a bad idea when Bucky Irving's on the field, because he is going to make you pay. Akib in the chat says, former Browns fan here. I told you all you would love Baker. Hey, I was on board with Baker from the jump. A lot of the longtime everydayers know that, but yeah, Akib, you're 100% right. Hopefully you decide to ditch the Browns and join the Bucs and follow Baker, and follow a team that supports and appreciates what they have at the quarterback position. Paul, aka Florida Dream House, love to see you in here, buddy. Game Ball is going to give 1 to Barton and Bucky. Strong debuts and a big win. I was really, really upset with that penalty that they called on Graham Barton. What a roller coaster of emotion it was to have him negate that 32-yard catch and run by Rachaad White, saying it was an ineligible man downfield. NFL replay, shout out to them. They were quick with it. They said, no. He was still in range. He was still lined up properly when the ball was released. That is a good play. Bucks march on down the field. It was absolutely fantastic. Bat W says, yo, James, I'm a convert too. J-Mac is a star. Again, I cannot stress how important it was for Jalen McMillan to get that touchdown catch. I texted the insiders after that drop when the Bucks got the ball back, and I said it would not surprise me if Baker goes right back to Jalen McMillan, get his head back in the game, help him forget that bad drop that should have been a touchdown. It wasn't until late in the game that he finally got that catch, but drew a couple of flags, some important flags that helped move the ball on some of these scoring drives for the Bucks. Akib with a follow-up. I did ditch the Browns after 35 years. Welcome. We are happy to have you here, but I am sad to say that is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Ran way over on time. Please check out everything that we have going on over at the 813.tv. Tons of stuff going up all the time. Lots of coverage. We are really loving what we are doing over there. Please support that. Plenty of articles, quick hitter videos, daily shows over there from a bevy of hosts, from the Loose Cannons guys to Jake Arians, JC Cornell, yours truly, Rock Riley. Lots over there. So go to the 813.tv. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on so you know every time I go live. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding Victory Monday. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.